Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters, and welcome to clip number 18 of this month of Ramadan. In this clip, we're going to discuss an event that takes place on the Day of Judgment and really shows us how the Day of Judgment and heaven and hell are so different from the lives that we live in this world. So in these verses, and in particular verse 101 of Surah Al-Mu'minun, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing what happens when they blow into the trumpet. And He explains that when they blow into the trumpet, then of course everyone is going to, die initially, right? And then they're going to be resurrected again. But He says in verse 101, فَإِذَا نُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ, when they blow into the trumpet, فَلَا أَنْسَابَ بَيْنَهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ وَلَا يَتَسَاءَلُونَ, that on that day there are no longer relationships between these individuals. وَلَا يَتَسَاءَلُونَ, and they don't ask about one another. So in this world, when you have a relationship with someone, the natural thing to do is to check up on them. The natural thing to do is to figure out how they're doing. If they're not doing well, you might try to do something for them. You might try to help them out, for example. This is natural in this world and in any situation where you have a relationship with someone. But the Quran says the moment we blow into the trumpet, these relationships, they start to fall apart. So what does this mean? This means the relationships are no longer based on blood. The relationships are no longer based on who you were spending time with. The relationships are based on faith and disbelief. So a believer is now going to actually feel like a brother to you. A believer is actually now going to feel like a sister to you. And the stronger your faith is, and the stronger the faith of that person, the closer your bond, the closer your brotherhood or sisterhood is actually going to feel to you, right? Similarly, the ties that we have through relatives and through blood, these are things that will slowly start to move away as the Day of Judgment shows up. So I might have a cousin, right? And I might have a stranger, but this stranger's faith is a lot closer to the level of my faith. And this cousin is not even close. Let's say this cousin is a terrible person, hypothetically, right? Well, when I show up on the Day of Judgment, do I still have love for this cousin? Not the same way. At the very least, what we can say is that it's going to be very different. Will I recognize that this person was my cousin? Yes, definitely, 110%. We all remember the things that happened in this world. We all remember the relationships that we had. Do we still feel that same way? No, now you feel very close to the people who are actually good people, and you feel far and distant from the people who were terrible people, right? Let's say, for example, I had a relative. This relative was a very cruel person, was a very horrible person. In this world, I still feel the kinship and the relationship. But in the next world, am I going to feel that? Not necessarily. فَلَا أَنْسَابَ بَيْنَهُمْ. These relationships start to fall apart. And this answers that very famous question that a lot of people ask. It says, well, how come, what if I'm in heaven? And it's interesting if people just assume that they're already going to be in heaven. But that's a point for another time. What if I'm in heaven, right? And there's a relative of mine who's not in heaven, right? And let's say he was a terrible person and he was in hellfire. Well then, what if my wish is to have that person be with me? Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala going to make it happen? Because He can't reject the favor or the ask of someone who's in heaven. At the same time, is He really going to bring someone from the hellfire into heaven? And the answer is, on that day, you will never even ask for such a thing. Because if that person is truly that terrible, that his place is in hellfire, you don't even have that love and affection for that person because that person wasn't a good person, right? If they were a good person, then yes, Quran kind of tells us that sometimes the level of a person can be elevated based on the relationships that they had in this world. But can a person from hellfire, someone who's terrible, bring it into heaven just because this person wanted to? No. The very fact that that person is in hellfire means that you won't really have a relationship with that person. The love and the affection won't be there because he was a terrible person. Even if that terrible person might have been someone who, through blood, was connected to you. Hopefully that answers that question.